Is not enough time to talk about eschatology, the study of the end times, that with which all of mankind is waiting, whether you realize it or not, for the day of the Lord when all is made right again. Is Jesus coming back September 23rd? I've heard this going back to 2017. Eschatology, the study of the end times. There's many different views and perspectives from very, very smart people all around. There's specifically two or three different views concerning what the Bible calls the millennium. Are we before the millennium? Are we in the millennium? Is the millennium a figurative thing? Is it a literal thing? That will start to dictate how you understand the tribulation, and then this other thing called the Great Tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble, Daniel's 70th week, and all that jazz. What did Jesus say the earth would look like coming into the time of his return? What will you be doing when he returned? Remember, he promised to come, and he did. He's promised to return, and he will. Who's the Antichrist? That is the question. We're talking about eschatology, the study of the end times, and there are people who believe that, hey, all of those prophecies about the end times have just really been fulfilled. There are others who say, no, a lot of it is yet to take place. And they argue about the dating of the time of the book of Revelation, etc., etc. What we do know is that John, one of the best friends of Jesus while he was on earth, John the disciple, John the beloved, he told us that even early into the first 100 years of the church, antichrists were already present. In fact, the spirit of the Antichrist was already present in the world, looking to bring a wedge between you and I, and between us and the true Messiah, the spirit of the Antichrist going out into the world. We see this in cycles. We see this with the German leader. I won't say his name because this video will probably get blocked, but the German leader that famously came up in just the last 100 and 200 years, but we see it over and over, even back to the time of Nero and Rome, these antichrists who look to quench the family of God. Let's take this a little slower. We're in part 4. We've laid down some groundwork for the study of the end times. One of the biggest things, and I had a great conversation with a buddy of mine not long ago about this. We have different views on the millennium, whether it's in the future, whether we're in a current, temporary, figurative, 1,000-year reign of Christ right now. Is Satan bound right now? Is he not bound right now? We're going to disagree on how we read Revelation chapter 20. Here's the thing. When we read Revelation, when we read 1st, 2nd Timothy, Thessalonians, the words of Christ on the Olivet Discourse in the Gospels, when we read the Old Testament prophecies about the coming day of the Lord, what you're going to notice is you're going to notice a lot of talk about lawlessness, children disobeying their parents, ultimately a world that's upside down. Not necessarily a world that's getting better, but a world that's de-evolutionizing. When a Christian who has a premillennial view, who reads the Bible and says, the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, it's a future thing. And therefore, there seems to be a literal great tribulation, which is going to be literally 7 years with a literal antichrist and a literal one world government, etc., with a literal mark of the beast. All of those literal, hyper-literal interpretations of these prophetic passages, prophetic narratives. What you start to notice is that the world really, not from a pessimistic view, but just the world really does start to match up with this gloomy end of the world that we are seeing on our television screens, on our phones, and just bombarded with on a daily basis. Here's why evangelical Protestant Christians stand with Israel. Their antennas are perked up right now because of everything that's happening. The Bible says that the Antichrist will take a seat in the temple of God, declare himself to be God. He will commit an abomination of desolation. This has taken place, yes, in 70 AD. It took place in Daniel's time, and it's taken place throughout the ages of the Greeks, etc. But here's what you don't want to miss. If the Antichrist is going to sit in the temple and declare himself to be God, or do something that would be an abomination of desolation, there has to be a temple. If there's a temple, there's a nation state of Israel. So all of a sudden in 1948, when Israel gets this land and this recognition from the world, they're being called back from the nations using some of that Isaiah prophetic language. They're being called back into this land, and now all of this two-state solution thing's happening, and a potential situation arises where a world leader could come and unite and bring peace to the land of Israel with the Hebrew, genetically Hebrew people, genetic Israel, and the rest of the world. That's when a premillennial perspective, your ears perk up. And you go, well, that sounds a lot like what Jesus prophesied would happen in the last days. You start looking at like a 7-day, 7,000-year calendar, and the 2 days that took place 2,000 years and 2,000 years, and then Jesus shows up, and now it's been about 2,000 years since he's been on the earth, rose from the dead, and promised to return on the Mount of Olives, which is land of Israel. So your ears kind of start to perk up from what's called a dispensational view, a premillennial perspective. You go, it sounds like it has not been fulfilled. It's partially been fulfilled. The birth pains echo the same story over and over again from the time of Daniel and Cyrus to the time of Rome and Nero and so on, even into 70 AD. But it sounds like it's all kind of spiraling, echoing, reverberations into a birth pain that ultimately is still yet in the future. It definitely seems like a very close future. Remember, Jesus said that his return would be like in the days of Noah. People would be getting married and be happy, and peace and security would be all around. But be careful, for sudden destruction comes upon those days. You'll remember in the time of Noah, there was a lot of lawlessness. There was even a lot of sexual promiscuity between higher beings and earthly beings and human beings. You look on a lot of what's going on today, and this is why, from an evangelical, Protestant, and predominantly premillennial dispensational perspective, you start to see those arguments. Now, we might get to maybe part 5, like the disagreements on the rapture and when that takes place. But just, you have to start with Revelation 20 and try to understand where this fits into a biblical chronology and how you're going to read those passages to help you forward. This one's a little bit longer, but worth taking the time to slow down and talk about.